chapter 4, reading verses 6 through 8, and then 16 through 18. 2 Timothy 4, 6 through 8, and 16 through 18. Lord, open our hearts and minds by the power of your Holy Spirit, as the Scripture is read, as your word is proclaimed, that we may hear with joy what you say to us today. Amen. 2 Timothy chapter 4. Paul writes, "For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time for my departure is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. At my first offense, no one came to my support, but everyone deserted me. May it not be held against them. But the Lord stood at my side and gave me strength, so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed, and all the Gentiles might hear it. And I was delivered from the lion's mouth. The Lord will rescue me from every evil attack, and will bring me safely to his heavenly kingdom. To him be glory forever and ever. Amen." This is the word of God for us, the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Form us from the inside out. Help me to be messenger to your people. May the words of my lips and the meditation of our hearts together be always acceptable in your eyes. The Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Well, I'm going to date myself again a little bit. Anybody remember a song? Randy Travis used to sing it. It's only a few years old in my mind. I checked, it was 2002. 3 wooden crosses. You guys know that one? Well, there's a couple lines from that song that really stuck with me, and I always think about it even though I don't hear that song very much anymore. It's not what you take when you leave this world behind. It's what you leave behind you when you go. It's what you leave behind you when you go. And that got me thinking. I read Paul's letter to Timothy, and it got me thinking about that. What will you leave behind when you go? What will you leave behind when you go? Some of us have children. We'll leave children behind. Some of you, not me. Some of you have wealth you may leave behind. I feel like we all leave memories behind, memories with our friends, memories with the people who knew us. May they be good memories. In my case, it'd probably be bills, debt that I leave behind. I hope not. I hate to be a burden. But Deb talked about legacy, and legacy is what I want to talk about today. We want to leave something good behind us when we go. Something that lives longer than we do, something that lives beyond even our children. We want to leave our values behind. We want to leave a better world behind. We want to change some lives. Maybe we want to be on the ground floor of founding some kind of institution that will help the community, like a rescue squad or a community center or maybe even a church. When you ask the Bible, of course, what will last the longest, the Bible tells us that faith, hope, and love last the longest. And the greatest of these is love. But we might hope that we'll teach our children or somebody that we mentor, we'll teach them something that'll last a long time, that'll give to the society that we leave long after we're gone. Has anybody heard of an evangelist named Mordecai Ham? Raise your hand if you've heard of Mordecai Ham. Yeah. Outside of Baptist circles, he may not be as well known. I got a Baptist here, so I got somebody who's guaranteed to know. Mordecai Ham was a famous evangelist in the early part of the 20th century. And he didn't die until 1960. He was around a long time. But one time, Mordecai Ham was speaking at a revival in Charlotte, North Carolina. And at that revival, a young man came forward and gave his life to Christ. And that man's name was Billy Graham. So when you think about the legacy of Mordecai Ham, you need to think about all the people who came to Christ at all of those crusades that Billy Graham led. Because he was part of the fruit. Part of the legacy of Mordecai Ham is the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association and all of the work that it has done, including Samaritan's Purse. When we read Paul's letter, we know Paul left a legacy. In what we read today, he said the time for his departure was near, that he had fought the good fight, that he had finished the race, that he had kept the faith. I love the humility in that. He didn't say he won the race. He said he finished. He did what he started to do. And we know that he wrote all these letters. He left these letters behind. That was part of his legacy. All these letters that he wrote to other Christians, to churches around the empire. He started churches, but his letters ended up being a big chunk of the New Testament. We know he suffered along the way. We know that he was beaten, that he was shipwrecked, that he was imprisoned. We know that he was eventually executed. He preached to many, and so one of the persons that he preached to along the way was Timothy. And Timothy came to know Jesus Christ. And here in 2 Timothy, he's writing a letter to someone who he shared his faith with, who now was a preacher. He left a legacy. Paul brought the gospel to all the Gentile world. By the way, you and I are Gentiles, so we are part of his spiritual legacy. That lasted a long time, didn't it? What does it take to leave a legacy? Have you ever really thought about that? The people who are remembered, what did they do? What was it that they did? And I got to thinking about this, and I think it comes down to a couple things. People who are remembered do things right. They do the right thing. They are people who have integrity. Now, integrity is the idea that we're going to do the right thing even when nobody can see us. Even when nobody's watching us, even when we're all alone, we will still do the right thing because it's the right thing. That's integrity. But if you did things right for a while, then you stopped, you still won't be the kind of person who leaves a legacy. You have to do the right thing all the time, always and everywhere, over and over again. You have to do the right thing, and that is called perseverance. If you do the right thing all the time, you will leave a legacy. So integrity and perseverance is what's needed. Now, you have many people who came out of this church who would have that title of having left a legacy. I've heard the names. I've heard Burl Steele. I've heard J.B. Swartz. I've heard Mr. Spittler. There are so many you could mention, I'm sure. I didn't know those people as well. I have to give you an example that I know about. A man who I knew in Effinger named W.R. Deacon. People called him Tink. Now, he ran a lumber mill. It was a timbering company, and he had his sons in the business with him, so it was W.R. Deacon and Sons. You could see his work in the lives of his family, You could see it in the mill. The mill always did things the right way. They always paid the cutters for the right amount of wood. They never shortchanged anybody. But it was more than that, more than his business life. The little wooden schoolhouse that he went to was falling down, and he rallied the community, and they fixed this place up, and they made it into a community center. It was a place where civic clubs could meet, where you could get on the schedule, have your wedding there. He built a community center out of his old school. He was a founding member of the local Ruritan Club. There was only a Ruritan Club because of him and 4 other guys who started it together. They realized how far they were from Lexington and that the fire company never got there in time, that their homes always burned, and they got their own fire company because Deacon led the way. And the church that I preached in was completely renovated because he rallied the community and his family to build up this little church, even though it was way far away from town. I mean, so far, there were more bears out there than there were people. I only knew him in the last 3 years of his life. His mind was sharp, but his body was failing, but he never quit. We saw him drag himself into church on a walker in obvious pain. It was killing him. But he dragged himself to church by sheer force of will. And because he showed us how important it was to him, he inspired other people. People would come up to me and say, well, if WR can be here, I can be here. Jesus called us to leave a legacy behind. He gave us commandments, didn't he? Love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And then what else did he say? What commission did he give you? Go and make disciples. Amen. Now both of those things can change the world if you think about it. Our obedience to these throughout our lives is what will leave a legacy behind. If we show love in our life, imagine what that means to our family. Imagine what that means to the people that we work with. If we show them the kind of love that Christ had for us, a kind of love that is selfless, that isn't about us, but is about the community that we're serving. What would it mean for this community if us as a church just goes ahead and obeys these commandments? If we go ahead and show this world the love of Christ, if we go out there and show them who Christ is and help them to find their way to Christ. So how do we respond to that call? I would say the right way is to go ahead and follow Paul. Look at what he said. He gave you a roadmap. He said at the end, he said it was poured out like a drink offering. Who knows what a drink offering is? Okay. Well, see, back then, they used to do sacrifices on the altar. They would kill these animals and spread the blood on the altar, but there was also wine in a cup, and that was a drink offering. And he didn't sprinkle a little bit of that wine on the altar. He didn't pour it about halfway on the altar. The priest went like this. He turned it upside down. He let it all go down on the altar. When he gave the drink offering, there was nothing left in the cup. See, Paul had reached the end of his life. He was in prison. He was facing execution any day. And so he tells you that in his life, he has held nothing back. He gave it all to Christ. Completely sacrificed his life to God. Do we hold back? See, I feel like we do. I feel like we don't want to give it all to Jesus Christ. I don't know why, but I feel like there's something inside of us that says that we're going to hold a little bit back for us. We're going to control it just a little bit. We don't want to give it all up because we don't know what God's going to do when we do that. And my question is, if we're people of faith, why don't we believe Jesus is going to do for us what He can do? Amen. Why don't we believe that if we give it all to Him, that He's just going to go ahead and take care of us? If we believe that God will respond like that, we can live our life differently and we can leave a legacy. So what did Paul say? Well, we have to decide to do something. The first thing Paul said is we have to fight the good fight. See, I'd like to have somebody say at my funeral, Jim fought the good fight. Well, what does that mean? Well, first of all, I think it means that I was a man of integrity. That whatever was going on, you could count on that person to do the right thing. But that means we have to fight temptation. We have to fight every day because we're going to want to do things the wrong way. We're going to want to take a shortcut. It's inside of us. We can't help it. So we're going to have to overcome that. Because if we sin, then the chains of sin will bind us. And if we're bound in chains, we cannot run a race. There'll be no legacy if we give in to that. So we have to be people of integrity. We have to be sure we teach. We have to be sure we evangelize. And more than anything else, we have to be real and walk the walk. Because what you say to people doesn't mean anything if you're not doing it yourself. If we don't, we'll be found out. And what will they call us? Hypocrites. And what keeps people away from church? Hypocrites. How are we going to spread the good news if we're hypocrites? We can't do it. Hypocrisy kills other people's faith. We have to stand for Jesus Christ in the community. We have to stand against competing values that say all the things that we don't want to do. Right? The gold rule out there in the world is, he who has the gold makes the rules. We can't allow that in here. We can't allow that in our lives, because if we do, who's going to listen when we say they should live a good life? So we got to fight the good fight. That's every day. Second, we got to finish the race, and that means don't quit early. We're never finished in our faith. We've never arrived at the destination until the day Jesus calls us home. We're never finished. The Bible is a living word, and we should be a living example of that word. So what is that about? That's about that other word I was talking about earlier. That's about perseverance. You've got to keep going. Deb handed out the stickers last week. Anybody remember what they said? Never give up. Never give up. Perseverance. You've got to keep going. Deb and I watched this movie about Churchill the other day. He had this thing that he would say, and you didn't understand the first time he said it. He said, KBO. KBO. He finally says it, because you're all wondering what's KBO mean. Keep buggering on. Well, keep buggering on, what does that mean? Well, that means keep going even when it stings. You see, Churchill was a man who was plagued with depression. And he had to lead the nation in a time of war. And people were against him within his own country the whole way. And so even when he was depressed and people were saying nasty things about him, he had to keep buggering on. Because to fail was to let the country go down in a time of war. So he KBO'd. He kept going. Even if the way is unpleasant, we have to keep going. We can't quit in our old age. Okay? Even if we start in our old age. Maybe you didn't even get started until your old age. Well, if you get started in your old age, I'll give you this. You can finish well. So we got to keep buggering on, and that means that we can't fail to be present. When the church doors are open, we need to be in here. Because we all need to work on our faith that much. We do. Because if not, we're going to go off course. We're going to do the things that causes people to call us hypocrites, and there goes our legacy. When you stay home and you watch the preacher on TV, I got to tell you, he's probably a better preacher than me. I'm going to give him that. But your absence here hurts us. You can be home getting a great sermon from Charles Stanley, but you're not in here, so we are weaker because you're there. Not only that, by the way, I can hug you and your TV can't hug you. So think about that. If we stop living, we die. See? I have a friend over in West Virginia, and she says you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. We don't want to be that other thing, do we? So we need to be growing. We need to be doing. We need to be finishing the race. See, that's what perseverance is all about. Because growing and doing is what leaves a legacy. Integrity over the long haul is what leaves a legacy. Nothing else will work. Look at the ones in your life who left behind a good name, and you're going to see both of those things. What did Paul say next? Keep the faith. Keep the faith. Go ahead and obey those commandments. Love God, love your neighbor, make disciples. What we're talking about here is not a religion. It is a relationship with Jesus Christ. You've got to stay in love with God. That's what's going to give you the strength. That's what's going to give you the perseverance. You've got to listen to God. Now that means read your Bible. I've talked to all kinds of people. I talk to them all the time. I've never met a person who said, I started reading my Bible every day and my life went downhill. I've never met that person. On the other hand, I have talked to many people who said, I took the challenge, I read through the whole Bible this year, and my life will never be the same. I've met a bunch of those people. It's like tithing. I never met a person who said, I started tithing and my finances went downhill. But I met plenty of people who said, I started tithing and my finances turned around. When you get God involved, things get better. So you got to listen to God. You got to spend time with God. We talked about it last week. You got to pray. Because when you pray, you're spending time with God. And the more time you spend in God's presence, the more time you're going to spend transforming. You're going to look more like Jesus. That's who I want people to see. I want to spend the time with Him. Because I want Him to mold me and shape me and make me better. I want people to see that. So you got to pray. And you got to teach the children, whoever they are. Now, they might be your children. They might be the ones you're raising. And I learned a long time ago, okay, since I got old, I learned that you never stop raising your kids. I wished you did. Sometimes. But you don't. So you keep raising your kids. So guess what? Teach them the faith. Teach them the faith. No matter how old the ones you are, that the ones are that you're raising, you've got to know that they are watching you. Yeah, they hear what you say. They act like they don't hear what you say. I don't care what age they are. They act like they didn't hear what you said. But they are hearing what you're saying. But more than that, they are watching you. They're watching you. When I baptize kids, I always want to tell the parents, okay, look, you need to show this kid that when things go bad, you all get together and pray. You need to bring them in on it. Say, oh Lord, this family's facing a problem and we need this or we need that, and please, Lord, help us. Let them see you ask God for that. How are they going to learn if you don't do it? Lead them by example. Show your children your faith. And then, you're not done. You're still not done. Did I mention you're not done? You got to make disciples. That's the other commandment. You got to invite people. I'm going to say that again because I know that's a foreign concept. You have to invite people. You have to invite them to come here. Okay? Fastest growing Presbyterian church in this country has a rule. Every member has to invite one person a year. Wow. Don't wear yourself out. One person a year. Get them to come. Now, you do have to get them to come, one person. But if they don't want to come to church, I understand. There's 2 generations of people out here who don't even know who Jesus is. That's okay. We pack bags to go over to the elementary school. Invite them to come to that. Invite them to work with us. And find them a job. We have a thing that we do. I love this church. Y'all hard workers. Everybody knows what to do and they just get to it. But here's the thing. If you're not from this church, you don't know what you need to do. Somebody got to take you and say, we need you over here. Come help us do this. See, that's better because they're engaged. You connected them. We have to do that. Find them a job. Invite them to fellowship. Invite them to trunk or treat. Ain't no preaching at trunk or treat. That's a problem, but we'll work on that. And you got to share faith with others. This is part of keeping the faith. You got to share your faith. You don't have to learn some technique. You don't have to learn anything special. Jesus has done something in your life. Tell him that. Tell him how your life's different. And that goes double for our families. I have so many people tell me, oh, I've invited my son, daughter, cousin, aunt. I've invited them so many times I'm giving up. Oh, people. Did Jesus give up on you? No. Okay. Well, that's your example. Jesus relentlessly pursues us. You have to relentlessly pursue them. It's not about asking somebody to come to church or come work with us or come do something. It's about getting them to actually do it. Think about this church. When was it founded? Who knows when it was founded? 1832? That's what I heard. Think about all the people who have come to Christ in this church. What kind of legacy did those people have who founded this church? Look at this beautiful place that we have. It came from all of that over all those years. We got a beautiful place. But you know what? It goes back further than that. Because even in 1800, there was a Greenville Circuit in the United Methodist Church. That's way back in the Second Great Awakening. The Greenville Circuit had 900 members. They left a legacy. Because 30 years later, somebody built a permanent preaching station here. So what does that mean? Not supporting the church won't help you have a legacy. And if we lose this church, we're not only letting ourselves down, but all the people who would have come after, who would have joined this church, and the people who founded this church, who left it to us. We've got a lot of work to do to keep the faith. So if we follow Paul, then we can leave a legacy. We can receive a crown. Remember he said that? We're all going to eventually we're going to finish our race. Raise your hand if you're not going to die. We'll all finish our race. We just don't know when. We don't know when. It might be tomorrow. And we will all face judgment. When you die, you will face judgment by yourself. You'll be alone. You're not going to be able to get credit for your parents' work. You're not going to be able to get credit for your spouse's work. You're not going to be able to get credit for grandma's work. But we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ to get what is due us for what we have done in the body in this life. Paul said he was going to receive a crown of righteousness. Now, it's not about a crown, it's about righteousness. Because of his life completely poured out for Jesus Christ, then he expected the righteous judge to give him righteousness. Because he held nothing back. We used to have a sign over the door on the way out of the locker room. Back when I was playing football, I know that's hard to imagine. There was a sign over the door. When we went out on the field, there was a sign up there that said, "Leave it all on the field." That's the way you want to live your life. You don't want any held back. Pour it all out. Leave it on the field. Because he did that, Paul's life, a single life, left this huge legacy. So we have to follow Paul. We have to fight the good fight. We have to finish the race. We have to keep the faith. And then we can face our departure with the same confidence. We can do these things not just to leave behind a better world. We do these things because we're striving to hear our Master say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." He'll say to us, "Many others know me because of you." That is a legacy. Integrity and perseverance. Start working today and it can be your legacy. Let us pray.